Okay, let's jump right into this explainer with a quote that is honestly just chilling. I ensured the biological continuity of this mission. That's Dr. Sun-hee Kim's cold justification for a non-consensual medical experiment that literally alters the course of human evolution.
Welcome back to the Explainer. Today we're unpacking the incredibly rich lore of the Centauri Covenant. We're going to explore how one deeply intimate medical betrayal aboard a generation ship spirals over centuries into a massive species-wide civil war. And a huge focus for us today is looking at Arc 1, Chapter 5 to figure out exactly where the real-world science of gene therapy ends and the speculative fiction begins. We'll trace this wild ride from a desperate parental choice all the way to a society where your very DNA is basically a heavily policed subscription service.
Section 1. A betrayal in the womb.
We start our journey by dropping right into the sterile, high-tension medical bay of the generation ship Inspiration. Parents Elias and Leila are dealing with a terrifying diagnosis for their unborn baby, Aria, fetal retinal degeneration. Now, Dr. Sun-hee Kim proposes a targeted gene therapy using a viral vector. And here is where the story firmly grounds itself in real science. Today, we actually use things like adeno-associated viral vectors to deliver healthy genes to treat hereditary blindness. It's a real thing, but Dr. Kim uses the parents' sheer panic about their child going blind on a dimly lit spaceship to get them to authorize an experimental, unmapped genetic alteration. Elias knows computer code inside and out, but biology, it's a black box to him. So he signs the biometric pad, totally believing he's just saving his daughter's sight.
Section 2. Engineering the near-infrared.
Now, what's wild is that under the guise of basic care, Sun-hee wasn't just fixing a defect. She was secretly installing a massive upgrade. She engineered a brand new photopigment pathway to drastically boost the baby's scotopig sensitivity, which is basically the eye's ability to see in near darkness. Biologically, the author is pulling from actual real-world research here on how rhodopsin and retinal structures adapt in extreme low-light environments, kind of like deep-sea creatures. But taking that concept and engineering a human in utero to have a permanent twilight-optimized visual pathway for the tidally locked planet Proxima b, that is the exact moment we leap from current science into brilliant speculative fiction. Sun-hee was literally forcing the next generation to adapt to a dark world without asking their permission.
To really put this into perspective, just look at this comparison. Baseline human eyes normally process light between 380 and 700 nanometers, but Aria's engineered vision, it stretches way past 900 nanometers. While a real person today might catch a super fleeting glimpse of infrared under highly specific lab conditions like 2-photon absorption, Aria unknowingly becomes a living prototype. She can naturally see near-infrared wavelengths where the rest of humanity is just looking at deep shadows. It's a total game changer.
Section 3. Biology as political territory.
So this specific procedure isn't just medical. It marks the exact moment biology becomes heavily guarded political territory aboard the ship. When Elias finally confronts her about this non-consensual engineering, Sun-hee drops this absolute bombshell of a line. "You are measuring the decision against one lifetime. I am responsible for the biology of the coming millennia." Talk about a God complex, right? She completely strips away parental consent and replaces it with a civilizational mandate, effectively making Aria patient zero for a massive, chilling shift in how humanity is governed. The ruling elite realize that if you can control the code of life, you can control the population.
And we really see this monopoly take shape generations later as the ruling class completely hijacks human biology. I mean, they literally throttle life expectancy itself. They roll out mandatory genome compliance. To even walk through a security gate to Ring 04, citizens have to submit to invasive bloodstream scans. The elite start hoarding a chemical called the 22-omega stabilizer, which turns immortality into a revocable quarterly subscription service. Imagine that. If you miss an audit, or if you try to modify your own body to live a little longer, you're violently detained and branded a future thief.
This puts us right in the character's shoes and forces us to ask a really heavy ethical question. If an institution controls your biology, do you truly own your future? On this ship, citizens realize with absolute horror that people don't die when their hearts stop anymore. They die when their credit runs out, and the elite decide their lease on life has expired.
Section 4. The Black Market Gene Trade.
As you might expect, when the law makes survival illegal, ordinary people are going to break the law. This sparks an explosive underground resistance, and this timeline gives us a great visual map of that slippery slope. We start way back in Arc 1 with Aria's secret in utero edit. By Arc 7, we hit the nightmare era of elite longevity subscriptions. Fast forward to Arc 11, and the oppressed underclass has completely lost faith in the official medical registry, turning to underground black market clinics instead. And finally, Arc 12 hits us with outright public species divergence. So it's a straight line from a doctor playing God in secret to a society openly fracturing into different genetic species.
Fighting back against this biomonopoly gets intense. Desperate people start trading stolen genetic material. They're out there exposing the ledgers that prove the elite intentionally suppress the intelligence of rival bloodlines. You've got characters like Silas and Celine extracting high-tier DNA shards and dealing in legacy memory. People are actually undergoing these incredibly dangerous, unsanctioned surgeries in dim, dirty clinics just to install hybrid bionics or bypass the elite's biological DRM. They're risking horrific mutations, literally mutilating themselves, just to break the elite's stranglehold on the future.
And just look at this staggering statistic, 42%. At the height of all this civil unrest, nearly half of the ship's active financial ledgers are being hosted on localized, underground AI models. Think about what that means. The citizens are literally decoupling their entire economy from the ship's central authority just to dodge the elite's registry and fund this clandestine biological trade. They are choosing a dangerous, decentralized freedom over a safe, heavily policed cage.
Section 5. The Red Star Destiny.
As the ship finally nears Proxima centuries later, all this simmering tension just explodes, and it all revolves around one mind-blowing medical discovery. Inside a healing chamber, scientists realize that human mitochondria, the powerhouses of our cells, are responding incredibly well to 630-nanometer red-shifted light, which crucially is the exact spectrum emitted by Proxima. Patients are suddenly healing at super-accelerated rates. And when scientists find identical mitochondrial DNA in extremophiles on a nearby moon, it hints at a deeply ancient genetic connection. It poses the wild question, were humans originally from a red dwarf system all along?
This mitochondrial bombshell completely cleanly fractures the ship's population into 3 totally irreconcilable factions, each with very different visions for survival. First, you have the restorationists, who want to preserve the Earth baseline human at all costs. Then you have the terraformers, led by figures like Seraphine Holt, who argue that humanity needs to spend centuries changing the hostile planet to suit us. And finally, the wildcards, the Red Star Ascendancy, driven by leaders like Mara Sen, whose philosophy is, don't change the planet, change the human.
The Red Star Ascendancy goes all in on radical public genetic transformation. For them, unlocking these dormant red light-optimized genes isn't some forced mutation. They view it as a sacred return. As their followers undergo these irreversible genetic therapies that turn their skin flush and their eyes near infrared, they rally around this incredible declaration. We are not adapting, we are awakening. Science basically becomes this mythic fuel for them, turning an interstellar exile into a homecoming.
Which brings us to the ultimate dilemma facing the crew of Inspiration. If survival out in the cosmos requires unlocking ancient DNA, installing bionic vision, and fundamentally leaving behind the biological baseline you brought from Earth, what exactly are you trying to save? It's such a fascinating look at where medicine, class warfare, and evolution collide. So I'll leave you with this to think about as we wrap up this explainer. When the future finally takes visible form, who is still willing to call it human?